Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Buncombe County Board of Education special called meeting, Thursday, March 6, 2025. This is a work session designed for us to focus on items of the budget that we will be working towards in the next 60 days. The mission of Buncombe County Schools will foster a culture of excellence and continuous improvement where every student will thrive and learn from exceptional educators. And our vision of Buncombe County Schools is for every Buncombe County School student to graduate on time, prepared to pursue their chosen path as critical thinkers and collaborative leaders in our diverse society. So I'll call this meeting to order. And first order of business is to approve our agenda for the day. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
I believe that's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Opening comments, Dr. Jackson, do you have any?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, board members. I would like to first share my appreciation for our board members. I'm extremely grateful for all of the phone calls and conversations you've had with our local and state leaders as we've worked through the budgetary challenges that have been caused by Hurricane Helene and understanding the context. This is our third budget work session with 4 more to come. That's a significant investment of time on behalf of our board members and on behalf of our school system. I just want to say thank you for all the time you're putting into this very important work. I also want to highlight our facilities and maintenance department. They have worked extremely hard not only to help us recover from the hurricane, but every year they spend a lot of time getting ready for budget season as they're putting numbers to requests that come from every one of our 45 schools and all of our departments. On this particular year, they've also been working very hard under Mr. Wyatt's leadership to be prepared for this work session, particularly as we consider ramifications to the funding we receive through Article 39. Ms. Thorpe and Mr. Wyatt will be talking about that. As you know, there is a bill in the Senate that would change how that funding can be spent, which would have, I believe, serious repercussions for our school system. And so we pivoted when that bill was released, and so Ms. Thorpe and Mr. Wyatt worked very hard to be prepared for today in order to make this meeting very timely. I'll tell you, there was a moment where I was sitting on the back of Mr. Wyatt's truck and we were looking through the presentation because we were at a school taking care of something there. And so again, want to thank our facilities department, but also, and our finance department, but I also want to thank our board members for the advocacy that you've been doing over the last few weeks. So thank you. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Jackson. Okay, Tina, I'll hand it over to you and Mr. Wyatt. Thank you for compiling all this information for us and the community as well.
Good afternoon, Chairman Elliott, members of the board, and Dr. Jackson. I too want to echo the words that Dr. Jackson just said, that I want to recognize and thank the Maintenance and Facilities Department, the Finance Department, and Technology Department. We have worked hand in hand preparing and organizing, and not only that, we start our capital meetings tomorrow. It's the first meeting of the month of March that we have about 8 to 9 meetings to go through all of our requests. So we have all the requests compiled and we have all that information ready as well. So I just want to thank you all for taking the time to hear us and to understand this very crucial point around our funding related to capital. So we're going to talk about investing in our future, the facility needs and replacement schedules, and what does that mean and where does the funding source come from? The agenda today, I'm going to go through some context around terms and definitions just to make sure that we all understand and anyone that's watching may understand the terms and the differences of what we're talking about. We're going to go through the facilities overview, the consequences for Buncombe County Schools facilities and students. what's on the table, repurposing of Article 39 funds, and what that really means for Buncombe County Schools. Then we will follow up with questions and comments. Some of the context that we're going to cover, as I said, was key terms, capital outlay budgeting process in depth, funding sources, and we will take a deep dive into Article 39. So what is facilities and planning versus maintenance? And I just want to make sure that we are all on the same understanding of the definitions and what it really means when we put it to action. Facilities and planning is strategically designing and managing a building to meet our future needs or meet the student needs. This includes planning, monitoring the enrollment and capacity within the buildings, major additions, and new construction. We plan 5 to 15 years in advance. We're going through all of the data, looking at permits, seeing what is growing in the area, what's decreasing in the area. We're looking at all types of the permits for single resident permits, multi-homes, townhomes, duplexes. We pull all of those each year from the Buncombe County government to know what type of residents are moving in, what the age groups are that are moving in, and we go through an in-depth look to plan out by area and by school system within those districts what is needed. And then maintenance is the upkeep of current facilities without major renovations, mowing the grass, changing light bulbs, floor repair, painting, minor roof patching, repairing gym floors, but it's all about a repair instead of a new construction. That doesn't add depreciation or value that would cause us to depreciate it. So that's the difference between the two. Also, that dives into capital versus an operating budget. So capital are the funds used for long-term investments like purchasing major equipment, building renovations, construction of new facilities that require us to depreciate them on a schedule for all of our auditing purposes and our financial statements. Operating are the funds covering day-to-day expenses, salaries, utilities, and supplies, along with repairs, depending on the cost of the repair. So I want to go in depth here because this really matters. Buncombe County Schools has been and will continue to be very intentional and very purposeful with our capital outlay budgeting process. We begin always around mid-October. The finance department works on new Google Sheets that carries forward all of the information that's in there from all the previous years. But we do a cleanup and we have those ready and we send those out about the middle of October every year, and we send those to principals, directors, and superintendents. And the reason for that is to give them the historical, because if a principal changes, they can see what the previous principals had requested and what may be a need there. They have the liberty to meet with their committees, and they do. They pull in advisory committees and different committees like safety teams within their schools, and they begin looking at what's needed to go on these capital requests. And that we give them from October 13th usually until the Tuesday that we go out on Thanksgiving break. And they are compiling all of these sheets for every school and every department. And then in November, we turn it off to the principals and directors and superintendents no longer have access. However, the real work begins. So the maintenance department, the facilities department, and the technology department have expediters, and they're the experts in the field. They look at every single project, and we have about 150 pages this year, and we have in the book we have around total requests, 436 million in total requests. So they are looking at every single project, doing an updated cost or doing a new cost, depending on if it was previously left in there and still needed and we didn't get to it or we phased it. And then they are costing out every single project. Then, once they do that from November 22nd, usually till around the Friday on February the 9th, whatever Friday that is. We turn it off. Finance turns it off from the expediters and the departments. They have it all done for the costing part. And then finance takes it from February 10th to around March 1st. We do a lot of cleanup, sorting, just making sure everything is in order. And then we produce the book that you all always see every year. We bring it to the work session, which is April 25th this year. So not only do we bring operational budget, we bring the capital book, the capital budget with it. So with that, we start tomorrow our capital outlay committees for this year, and those will run through March 28th. And there's a committee. It's always 4 principals, 2 to 3 directors, facilities, maintenance, technology directors, who are the experts in those fields, and then they bring in a couple of their team members from those departments, usually the assistant director or the facilities director underneath Clark, the facilities manager. So they're in the room, and finance is in the room. We're in there just keeping up with everything and listening and documenting all the discussion. We usually, it usually takes us 3 to 5 meetings to go through every single project 2 to 3 times, and then we have to balance within a budget a projection that we're given by the county. So we do not have our numbers yet from the county on the projections for our funding for either Article 39 nor 4042 funds. So in context, our facility funding sources are 3 sources that we have available at this current time. This is what may be on the table. Article 39 is approximately 50% of our capital budget each year. The way that the Article 39 is currently written by legislation, it must be approved by our Board of Education, and we always bring those projects to you. The School Capital Fund Commission then has to approve, as well as the Board of Commissioners. These projects must be $100,000 per project per site, or the funding source could be used to retire debt services. We currently have about $25 million from the county in debt services that we have to meet. Article 4042 is about the other 50% of our capital budget funding that we get each year. This is the most flexible source of capital funds. Must be used only for capital improvements. Funds are allocated by the Capital Outlay Committee, recommended to the superintendent, approved by the Board of Education, as well as the Board of Commissioners. All of these funds now usually become available July 1 of each year. Then there's another small component, the lottery funds. Those are very restricted, and they're very supplemental. They're small compared to the other 2 buckets. They must be also approved by the Board of Education and the County Commissioners, as well as NCDPI. Once we get all of that approved, then we can begin working with a lottery project. Yes.
Could you talk a little bit more about the debt servicing?
Yes. So prior to, let me explain, let me get to one more slide, because when I get there, I'm going to talk about the history of Article 39, okay, and it will tie into the debt service on that.
Thank you.
And Tina, can I ask a question? And if you're getting to it, it's okay. Can you explain where Article 40 and 42 funds come from? Mm-hmm. And then on the lottery piece, if you could just give us an idea of how much money we get from the lottery, because people will say, where does the lottery money go? Well, we get just such a small portion. I think it's important for the public to understand about that.
Let me answer the lottery question right now, but okay, my next slide's going to get to the breakdown of all of the articles and how we get those. Okay. But the lottery, I want to state this, when it was enacted in the early 2000s, it was supposed to be supplemental to the general funds that the state gave us for education. And as time has gone on, if you look at the comparison, the lottery has replaced some of the general fund that goes into, when they say that they have funded teacher assistants in a classroom, they're talking about the normal allotments that are given by the state for our teacher assistants. They've taken lottery funds over at the state level, put it into the bucket that gets sent to us for teacher assistants, and it's controlled by them. We can't get extra teacher assistants. We have to stay within that allotment they give us. So funding has been replaced from the general educational fund that we used to receive in percentage-wise, that has been, now lottery is covering a large portion of that.
So instead of it being supplemental, it really took the
Yes.
place of some of the operating. And one last thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's lottery sales, is it just lottery sales in Buncombe County? Is it across the state? Can you
So the
explain how
way,
that works?
yes, so lottery is based on the ticket sales within Buncombe County that we get for
Okay, that's what I meant.
capital projects.
Okay.
So let me dive a little deeper into lottery. So the true lottery funds that are left after they move wherever they want to fund budgets, the portion that's left in lottery for us to acquire is capital projects only. That's what we as a school system can request. We get about, depending on ticket sales, but usually average around 300,000 per quarter, because they're on a quarter lag, and we get them that way.
I think that's a great explanation, because again, we think about lottery and all the millions that I'm gonna win someday. Buy those tickets all the time. But it's just important, I think, for people to know it's just what's sold here in Buncombe County, and $300,000 a quarter is
It-
really not a lot of money.
It's very supplemental
It
to
is,
what,
yeah.
and we usually, because it's so unique, because you cannot use it for school technology needs, you cannot use it for central office, you cannot use it for modulars, because it's so unique. We
Right.
usually, when we're going through our capital outlay process, we usually identify something in there that would really match what the lottery funding is for. And then we usually bring that to you as well. The last 2 years, we have brought that on the work session, asking for that, and then you approve it when you meet the next time
Thank
to
you.
approve all budgets.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, this is
And
the
a quick
one,
question real quick.
yes.
Does this include charter and private schools as well? All of us lumped into one pot?
So it's very specific by schools. If you go out to the North Carolina Department of Revenue, charters do not get this piece of the lottery from our funding. It's broken out. Asheville City's got their own bucket, we've got our own bucket, and it's all out there on the Department of Revenue lottery. And not from our not from our pot. Okay. This is what I want to dive into. This is a breakdown of the 7% sales tax in Buncombe County and most counties across the state, but there's some that have different sales tax because they've taken on different articles that they've approved. So across the whole state, 4 3/4 cents out of $1 goes straight to the Department of Revenue for their tax purposes and funding. Then Article 39 legislation is a 1 cent of every dollar that of sales tax in Buncombe County is split 50% to the School Capital Fund Commission. It's called Reserve Fund here, but that is the School Capital Fund Commission on the left, or your right. And then on the other 50 cents of that penny, 50% of that penny, is going to the county and 6 municipalities. Now, this 50% is split, or was split, from from 1983 to 2016, this 50% was split based on ADM for Buncombe County Schools, 85%, and Asheville City at 15%. In 2016, when they took the legislation, took the Article 39 back to legislation and asked for amendments, they formed the School Capital Fund Commission in 2016. And we have averaged at around 70% instead of 85% since the change in 2016 that we received of the 50% of the penny. Now, not only does Asheville City get that piece of the penny, over here, they are a taxing district. And so they get a share of the 6 municipalities right down here. So the fire districts, the Asheville City Schools, and the county general fund gets percentages of that, 50%. So if they change Article 39, it's going to drastically impact fire districts, Asheville City Schools, county, along with our funds. This is going to be a major change for some of these municipalities, along with us. Okay. The other article I was speaking of, Article 40, is a half of a penny of that 7% sales tax. Here's how it works. The gross receipts are allocated to all taxing districts, including the 6 municipalities, Asheville City Schools, once again, because they're a taxing district, and all fire districts. Then the county's share, they split it, and 30% of that goes to our capital outlay, Article 40. That is also split, this 30% is split based on ADM between Asheville City School and us. So they get a portion at the very onset of this, and then they get a portion after it's split again. And then 70% goes straight to the general fund out of our Article 40 sales tax in Buncombe County. Article 42 is another ½ cent sales tax. It is split identical up here, 6 municipalities, Asheville City Schools, and all fire districts. Then the county's share gets split 60% to our school capital fund, Article 42. That is also split by ADM. We get about 85% of the 60%, and Asheville City gets 15% of the 60% of that ½ penny. And then the county gets 40% of that to go straight to their general fund. So the county's already getting a large portion of Article 39 in the general fund. They get 70% of this in their general fund, and they get 40% of this one to go straight to their general fund. Article 44 tax, we used to have it enacted here, but it was repealed in October of 2009. But the reason I kept it on here, there are a few refunds or rebates that come through back that we still get a small amount that comes through. It's not even worth mentioning, but I wanted to be very transparent. There is still an Article 44, some small funding, very rare. Then, in Buncombe County, we also have an Article 46 tax, and that was 1/4 of a penny that's supposed to go straight to AB Tech capital improvements. Now, did that explain how this is broken down? Does that make sense?
It does, but I have another question. Article 40 and 42, is there an explanation for what the difference is, or is it just the percentage of who gets what?
It basically breaks down just percentage differences, but it is a different article. So legislation has it set up that all counties can, if they choose, pass it through voters to approve the 40 and the 42 and the 39. There's a little bit of difference, but they actually lump it together, 40 and 42, and send that one over monthly, each month, but it's about 3 months behind. They send over in one lump sum after they do the calculations of 40 and 42 together. So when you hear me say Article 40, 42, I lump it together because they're sending it as one amount each month.
But it's still two separate.
It's two separate sales tax that's calculated into everything we buy.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Just lastly, when folks refer to the Asheville City school tax, that's not represented in your
No,
chart here?
they get another, their sales tax is another whole percentage on properties. That's not the sales tax, that's a property tax they're talking about.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Can you remind me when the Article 46 tax was passed?
I would have to look that up. It's
Okay.
been many years.
I was trying to remember, and I was trying to think if it was like.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
it's been a while. Yeah, I'd have to look up the date for you, but it's been several years ago.
Okay.
Was it the same time the bond referendum passed for the schools?
I can look it up and get back to you, because I don't know the exact date off the top of my head.
Okay. I can probably look it up too. I just thought maybe one of our heads might have it.
So we're going to dive deeper into the Article 39 a little bit more. I want you to have the context around this. And I've got actual hard copy articles. This went national news in 1983. The school board and the National Association sent out a survey to all the major cities across the country. 34 states actually responded. I have an elaborate research document on this. So Senator Nesbitt worked very hard in Buncombe County to get this passed so that we could repair and renovate, and at that time also meet the need of our growing ADM. But in that, we were called the dilapidated dozen. You can see New York City schools system was number one. And Buncombe City Schools, or Buncombe County Schools, that's referring to us, was number 9 in 1983. Now, it was showing that we needed $70.5 million in 1983 to do the repairs to our facilities, our needs. In today's dollars, that would be $236 million. Why is that relevant? Because we have requests today of $436 million. We cannot spare one dime of our Article 39 to not go towards facilities and repair. And there's, in this study and many other studies, you're going to see how much and how important it is to make sure your buildings are maintained. It's so important that the General Assembly has a General Statute 115C408 that says that the county government's responsibility is to ensure the school system facility requirements are met. So between 1983 and 2016, we did average 85% of that half penny I was showing you. And then, as I was saying, when we moved in 2016 over to the School Capital Fund Commission, we've averaged 73% since the 2019 timeframe. However, our commissioner, one of the commissioners, and our board member worked very hard last year, 24-25, to get us back to a similar 85-15%. That adds up to millions of dollars, between 70% and 85%. If we don't stick close to that ADM, based on the number of buildings we have, based on all the repairs that we have, and Clark's going to go in depth around how much square footage we have, flooring, roofing, HVAC, mechanical. He's going to dive into that. But that's millions of dollars that we've given up since 2016 that has caused us to defer our repairs and our renovations. We really strategically look at phasing our projects so that we can touch as many things as we can to make the necessary repairs. But that is a cost. There's a cost involved with that. So you've got to take into consideration that that has cost us thousands of dollars, millions, that we could have been spending on our buildings and not be at a request of $436 million today. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Wyatt and let him dive deeper into the facilities and maintenance.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. We're going to go through I'm going to touch really high level. As Ms. Thorpe said, our budget requests are long. There's many of them, many needs in our system, so we would be here for weeks and days talking about it. So I'm going to talk about some projects that are high level. Most people don't realize our buildings, the average age of our buildings is 50 years old. I'm getting ready to turn 50 in a few years, and they say the check engine light comes on when you turn 50. So, you know, that's just kind of the same way our buildings are. After they start getting old, things start breaking. And I don't want this meeting or this discussion to go over that we have all these dilapidated buildings, because I'm proud of our facilities, and I hope y'all are. You walk into them, they look nice, they are painted well, they're well maintained, they're clean. But what looms in the background that someone like myself, people ask what keeps you up at night, it's our infrastructure. Infrastructure is the collection of systems that keep our buildings operating. It's stuff that people don't see. You know, our technology wiring that's above the ceiling, our roofs, our plumbing that is underneath the concrete slabs, our switch gears that are hidden and built in rooms that people don't have access to. All of these different life safety systems, not only are they getting old as well, but engineers are getting really good at designing systems that have a specific lifespan. And I don't know if you've experienced this personally, we have become a throwaway society. And the way we have come, it's hard to find repair parts for things. We have a talented group of people that can repair almost anything, but you've got to have the parts to do it. So some of our systems get to a point that we don't have the ability to repair them, and they have to be replaced just because they can't get the parts. Most of us know we have 4.5 million square feet of brick and mortar, actual buildings. We have 100 mobile classrooms in our system. We maintain about 600 acres of landscaped areas, and there's roughly 200 acres of parking lots in our system. Some of the strategies that we use to do what we can with the money we have, as Ms. Thorpe said earlier, this process starts through our budget process. This is, I don't know of any other process like this in the state. I talk a lot with directors across the state, and nobody does what we do as far as getting stakeholder input, all the way down from, you know, our principals, our teachers, our different groups and committees in our buildings. They have a long time to put anything they feel is a need on this budget request. And then our professionals, our maintenance and facilities and technology professionals, do the same thing. And we're putting in items that people don't see, you know, things that have nothing really to do with the functionality or the operation of a building. It's more the functionality of the actual structure itself. We also use third parties. We use architects and engineer professionals. We have hired security and safety professionals. We've hired engineers to do roof assessments. What you see on your top right is just a little excerpt of our capital outlay 4042 budget. And as Ms. Thorpe was mentioning, that starts tomorrow. That process, when we start, we go through all the needs, and as a committee, we decide how the best way to not only make our money go as far as we can, but what budget source makes the most sense for the particular project. So the uncertainty of Article 39's future is really going to make those meetings difficult, because we don't know how we can place different projects that typically belong there. Is that funding going to be available? Always our needs outweigh the funding, and how we deal with that is we phase a lot of projects. We do things that take several years. Typically when a new building is built and a roof supposed to last 20 or 30 years, you would assume 20 or 30 years later you replace the whole roof. We don't do that. We look at that roof in little sections and just replace what we have to, because we don't have enough money to do the whole thing at one time. So we use phased approaches to spread that peanut butter as thin as we can, because we only have so much. I'm going to talk about, again, our agent infrastructure. See if I can work this technology here. I'm not the best in the world at it. I did have it. I'm losing it. You want to help me, Tina? Click it one time. Sorry. That's why I don't work in the technology department. There we go. Sorry. All right. It's like working two computer screens. That one's just too big. We look at our infrastructure. It's a simple math project, really. We have components listed on your left, and we have a unit. How many of these components do we have in our facilities? Pick fire alarms. We have 44 fire alarm systems in our school system. They last about 20 years. If we have to spend $770,000 annually on fire alarms to maintain. If we go 1 year and don't spend $770,000, then we're going backwards. So the following years, it just compounds and compounds. I'm not going to go through all these lists, but you can see, if you scroll down to the bottom of this, it's around $26 million that we need to spend annually on simply maintaining our infrastructure. This is nothing new. This is not a new front office project. This is not an addition to a building. This is not anything new. This is what we have today in our system. This is simply replacing the item at the end of its expected life. So that's almost $27 million, really. These are capital projects, and some of them, due to their size, will also move into the article. We use Article 39s for these as well, because we don't receive enough capital funding, and we'll talk about that in a second, annually, to even keep up. All right.
So Clark,
Let me
so
click back up.
explain to people the importance of why we have to maintain, because I think if people can relate it to their own house, you build a house, you put a roof on it, you buy shingles. Shingles say a 30-year warranty. Does not mean it's going to last 30 years. They saying that's the expectation of the life, they said, if nothing happens. So if no storms, no snow, no rain, that roof would do that. HVAC, you have to maintenance it twice a year. So explain to people why we have to do this and why we have to spend it, because this upkeep has to keep going year after year, just like we do our own homes.
It does, and one thing that fortunately in my career, I've never had to call a superintendent and say, look, I'm sorry, we can't occupy this building for the next 3 months because of X, Y, or Z. Not only have we become a society of not having repair parts, we also don't have a lot of materials sitting around. We don't have chillers sitting around. We don't have switchgear sitting around. These items are built when you order them. So if you lose certain building components, it could make the building inoperable until we get that repaired. So at that point in time, you can't occupy that building. If the fire alarm system's not working, you cannot occupy that building. So we have to be smart and replace these systems prior to their, them failing. We also do proud of our team, and I know technology does the same thing. When we do replace systems, we save the parts of the old systems. So if we replace a fire alarm system today, we save all those parts of the old system so that we can keep our old systems running longer. So we, trying to spread every dollar as thin as we can. Our roofs right now, we're going to talk about in a minute, that's the most important in my mind. If you don't have a good roof and you don't have a building that's not leaking, we don't have anything. Everything below that is just a trouble, and we're getting really close to that point. We have pushed the can down the road many years on roofing, and it's catching up to us. I hope that answered your question. Back in 2019, we hired a security consultant to evaluate our system, and we as a system made 3 commitments, large commitments. One of the commitments was to work on our open classroom buildings. We have 3 of those. We had Hall Creek, we have Glen Arden, and we have W. Williams. Hall Creek's been corrected. That building's gone through a major renovation. It's a nice facility. And we have W. Williams is currently under construction, and Glen Arden, we have thoughts on it. We also worked on our front office reconfiguration, changing the way visitors are controlled coming into our buildings. And the third item was our exterior rekey project. The exterior rekey project will be done this summer, and we're still working on the front office reconfigurations. We'd like 34 more buildings. At the rate we're going, if we continue receiving the same amount of funding we have historically, it'll be 10 more years before we get the front offices completed. Roofing. We look at roofing in what we call roof areas. So a roof area to us is an area of roof that's on the same plane. So if it changes elevations or it changes roofing type, that changes a roof area. We have 1,130 roof areas in Buncombe County Schools. The total value of our roofing systems today is about $160 million. That's what the value of our roofs are. According to our partner that performed the roofing survey, in the next 5 to 8 years, we must spend $50 million on our roofs. They are that's to repair the very poor or the poor roofs, as they describe them. We'll pull up 3 highlighted projects we talked about a second ago. One thing I would like to bring up, if you've never been to Glen Arden, and this picture doesn't really do justice, but if you look, I actually took this photo, and this represents 3 classrooms. There are 3 classrooms that are basically they're separated by some walls that we as the maintenance department installed years ago, trying to help segment the building to some extent, but we can't do any more. There's nothing else we can do to this building. without code implications. So this has been like this for a while, but these pods, there's 3 classrooms. Actually, there's 6 classrooms that are wide open. There's 3 on either side, but this is one half that you're looking at. So if you see the children walk in, they hang their book bags and then put them in the cubbies. But to your left in that photo is where all the classrooms are. Glen Arden actually was planned to be renovated following Hall Creek. That was the county's plan. When part of that plan was to upgrade the mechanical system at W.D. Williams. In 2018-19 budget year, we were funded, or we were provided budget money to replace the mechanical system at Williams, and went through the design process, went to the county to get a permit, and realized we can't update this mechanical system due to code implications. And so what it did at that time, we had to switch gears and update W.D. Williams prior to Glen Arden. So that's why you see us working on W.D. Williams. We're doing that as a phased approach. Right now, that project will come to a stop if we do not receive additional funding. We need $20 million more to finish that job. Failed to mention Glen Arden. We hired a consultant there. Glen Arden's $40 to $45 million to build a new school there. That's how much money we need there. North Buncombe High School, we're in the middle of a major mechanical system upgrade. It's partially funded. We've funded phase 1 and phase 2, and those phases could be as many as however many we have to do, but we need $19 million additional to finish updating the mechanical system at North Buncombe High School. If we don't receive that funding, that project will come to a stop as well.
All right, so Clark, so with Glen Arden, to fix Glen Arden to be what Glen Arden needs to be, if it takes $45 million to build a new school, how much will it cost to fix everything?
So our consultant, when they did the advanced planning study several years ago, they did an analysis of that. And there's a couple $1 million difference between a renovation project and a total new school. It's a very small amount of money, and that's, that analysis was done, several years ago, and then lessons learned from us. Trying to renovate an operable school is not a pleasant experience. Hall Creek was a difficult project. W.D. Williams is going to be a difficult project, just because construction and classrooms don't go together. It's just, no matter how hard you try, it's just a renovation process is loud. It's it's just not pleasant. So it would be my recommendation that we build a new school and have a changeover one day, move from one building to the next, and be in a nice new facility and not interrupt the instruction process at Glen Arden.
And then we sell the existing school property, right?
No, we would build it on that property and just tear the existing building down. That would be the plan. Any other questions? So like Ms. Thorpe said, we're going to start our meeting tomorrow, our 4042 budget meeting that, we can predict, or we will get a projection from the county soon that says, here's how much money you're going to receive. Our budgets are over $435 million. If we know we can plan on Article 39 being around, our capital budget we can plan on roughly $34 million that as we're going through these meetings, we can make plans. Without or Article 39, we're going to have somewhere between 14 and 17 million. So it definitely will be very consequential to the facilities of Buncombe County Schools. As you well know, Reverend Martin mentioned earlier, if you don't repair things, If you take a roof, if you replace a roof when it needs to be replaced, you're only replacing the roof. If you wait too long, you could be replacing the entire roof structure, all the way down to the decking. If you're repaving a parking lot, if you repave it in time, you're just repaving it. If you wait too long, you're going all the way back down to the ground and rebuilding that parking lot from the ground up because it's failed. As Ms. Thorpe said earlier, there's an article here, there's a link you're welcome to click on from the Texas School Board Association that talks about, it goes in deep into data and how buildings affect test scores. And also, it shows how people don't want to come to a decline in school, you know, and we all know we're working to preserve ADM. So, you know, it's important for us, for lots of reasons, to maintain our buildings properly. What's on the table? If you haven't seen this, here's the bill that's currently in Senate. It's in one of the committees, and it changes the wording for any public purpose. I'm going to be honest, from my perspective, this will keep me up at night, because I know the looming infrastructure needs that Buncombe County have, and I know each year, you know, how exponential expensive things get year to year, and this will create some problems for us as a system. Thank you all for your time and advocacy for us, and if you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Clark, let me just clarify something, please. On the bill that has been presented at the state level, what the sponsors of the bill are asking is that it would allow Buncombe County commissioners to use what would be Article 39 capital projects. And if this bill is passed, then it gives them more flexibility on we can use it for operating funds or capital. Is that?
The way it's written right this second, it could be used for any public purpose.
Okay.
So
I just want to clarify that so
Yep.
that people understand.
so it doesn't even have to go to the school system.
Okay.
It could be used for any public purpose.
I think that'll keep us all up at night,
It
right?
keeps me up at night.
Yeah. I just want to make sure people understand that, because, you know, there's lots of rumblings out there about it.
I have something.
Yes.
So is it about $20 million? Is that what we received this year in Article 39?
So it fluctuates. You know, used to it was a per ADM. Now we go before the commission, and both the city school and the county schools present their case, basically, of our needs, and it's decided on. So it fluctuates year by year, but the total amount of funding, Ms. Thorpe will have to speak to that.
So last year, it took in $62 million from the sales tax. And then time they take off administrative costs, and then they start doing the split. And then they also have to pay the debt service of $25 million this year. Then that's where it gets broken down, and we got 85% last year, and that's where we got 17 million last year.
Did you say 17.8?
We got 17 million last year out of Article 39 for Buncombe County. It was 17.1.
Okay. And you were going to explain more about debt services to
Yes.
Mr. Elliott's question earlier.
And
Let
you
me-
said, what's the payout schedule? You said July 1st.
Oh, on Article
On Article
39, on Article 39, the way that this becomes effective, the budget becomes effective July 1st. For school systems, we have to incur the debt, meaning not debt, but we incur the bills, we pay the bills, we encumber whatever our project is that we're working on. He may have a chiller. And when Clark gets the chiller in place, because we cannot pay in advance. We have to get the chiller in place to the vendor. We have to pay for it. Then we send the request over to the county to reimburse us on Article 39. That is different than 4042. Article 4042 gets divided in 12 months and sent to us monthly at the end of every month. Does that answer that?
It does. So we would pay for services out of our reserve fund?
Our fund balance that we,
Our fund balance that we already lost $4 million of?
yes,
Okay.
very good question. So back to the debt service. In 2000 and, don't quote me on this, it's 18 or 19, the county took on the role that every single project would be rolled into a bond, and every single project then would have a interest, a debt service on it, and that we would have to be responsible for paying with these funds. So we have gotten to a point with everything that they've rolled, every project since then, that our debt, our interest payment this coming year is $25 million. Is what was reported in our last School Capital Fund Commission meeting.
Thank you.
So how did that work before that change in 2016?
So in 2016, before that, it was given to us exactly like 4042.
Okay.
All the proceeds came in, and they divided it out by ADM and gave it to us in those monthly increments.
And there was no debt service attached to those capital expenditures prior to 2016?
Well, we had taken on some COPS at that particular, back when we built the intermediate schools, and we took care of it through the payment.
Okay, thank you. Just one note while we're here. I haven't seen this language formalized in bill language yet, but new language was crafted after some advocacy was done around this issue.
This is what's posted today.
Yeah,
On the
and this is where we'll have to get some clarification, because there was other language that was submitted that is supposed to change that, which would say, let's see, county may use net proceeds allocated to it by the Secretary of Revenue under Article 39 of Chapter 105 of the General Statutes for school capital and school operating purposes. Instead of any public purpose, or whatever the language said before. So I guess my question is, from your perspective, if the language did change to that,
It would already be posted, where you go look it up, it would already be posted on the General Assembly website. It's not. This is what is in the Rules Committee right now.
Thank you, Mrs. Thorpe. Mr. Chairman, if I might,
Yeah.
to your question and to your point, this is what's currently posted. There has been a request for a revision. We certainly would prefer the revision to what's currently before the Senate. However, the language that's posted is still problematic, in that using Article 39 for operating, even though that helps us on our operating side, it hurts us on our capital side. And my worry is that Article 39 sales tax funding would be used to supplant our operating funding, much like the lottery funding has been used at the state level to supplant previous funding. And so my concern is that we would wind up actually being hurt on two sides, because we would lose capital funding and our operating funding would be diminished. This particular bill has a sunset of June 30th, 2027. And so at that point, if this were to go forward, we would revert back, but the operating cost, the general cost, would have been subtracted because it was supplanted by Article 39. And so there's short-term loss, there's long-term loss. And so I certainly, as superintendent, do not support this bill, and hope that it finds a filing place to be in a trash can somewhere, because it just stands to harm our school system, because we are so far behind today based on the funding that's been available historically.
And if I might add, we highlighted 3 or 4 projects. There will be, if this funding goes away, there will be many projects stopped in their tracks. And, you know, hundreds of projects stopped and really hard, tough decisions to be made. And, you know, the capital committee spends a lot of time trying to really make sure that we do things, you know, we spend money in each district. We try to help each school out to some extent. It may be something as small as helping them replace a cafeteria table, but we've tried to do everything we can. If this goes away, you will not see money spent at every school. It may be very few schools, and it's really gonna change the way we operate or have operated in the past.
Can we just revisit one, thanks for the discussion, and thank you, Superintendent Jackson, for clarifying that even if that language does change to reflect, you know, may be used for school capital or school operations, that still is very problematic depending on how that's leveraged. Also, from an uncertainty perspective, you can't plan capital projects that take months and months of lead time to plan without some kind of certainty around, well, what percentage of the total $39 are going to be allowed, you know, put in this capital bucket this time. Because why would you do that if you didn't think it was going to be 100% every time?
Yep.
Something else going on there, but okay. So my question is about the total value of Article 39, like from an annual basis. I was looking back in here and I've seen some mentions of, you know,
I think
is it in here
it's
somewhere to
roughly
say like effectively like
$64 million something, the total value.
The tax collected last year was 62 million.
62.
that was for Article 39.
Only. That
Article
was
39 tax was
2 million, a little over 62 million
62 million, and
collected at the state level.
yes, okay. But for our portion.
Well, the
that-
problem is our portion is no longer a predicted amount because we have to go to the School Capital Fund Commission to ask for it. So some years it may be higher, some years it may be lower.
Ms. Thorpe, go back
Yeah.
to the penny
Yeah, sorry,
diagram,
that's where I'm
please.
getting lost.
No, yeah, I'm sorry, here we go. These are good questions.
I think it's a very important question because, as the chair has indicated, while there's a total of $62 million, half of that is taken off the top, and that goes to the county and the 6 municipalities, including Asheville City Schools. Half of the $62 million goes to the School Capital Commission, who then determine where that money will be spent. From the top of that is the debt service that has to be paid first. And then the commission hears presentations from both school systems and makes a determination of which projects will go forward to the commissioners. I do appreciate Commissioner Wells, who advocated for that to be on an ADM basis last year, and so we returned to 85% coming to our school system, and we'll continue to advocate for that. Because as you see on this particular slide, Buncombe County Schools is only drawing from very few buckets as opposed to our sister school system. And so we have to be very careful with Article 39 because that's our opportunity to impact our buildings.
And prior to the formation of the School Capital Fund Commission, we could really plan because we could predict, like 4042, we know that's going to be somewhere between $14 and $17 million every year. So we can really plan for those funds. Prior to that, our 5 to 15-year plan, which included debt service, we could choose to, build a new school as a system. We had the ability to know that's coming and go through different processes to use those funds for debt service. But once we went to the School Capital Fund Commission, even though we can hope and guess and think this is how much we may get based off the 85%, we're still not guaranteed that.
Thank you. So if I'm doing my math real quick correctly, 62 million statewide, that's just whatever, last year. Half of that's 31, and then roughly 85% of that's 26. And then so out of that $26 million, these are rough, right, hypothetical kind of numbers we're tossing around here, but out of that 26 million, we have to service the debt on $25 million worth of bonds that are out. Is that what I heard you say earlier?
So the debt is taken at the top after, when it comes in, so they have to take that from the 62 to pay the debt.
Okay. And on an annual basis, what's the value of that debt service?
It's 25 million this year. That's how much debt they're paying, interest.
So
Seems like
in the amount that we're getting, we're not even getting enough to maintain what we need to maintain in our school system, to keep the buildings safe.
I'm definitely not an accountant, so, but if you look at the way the debt service works and the way the debt falls off and the way the money comes in, the county looks at it over years. So Article 39, typically you'll have, as debt falls off, you'll have more money available, and then it kind of ebbs and flows, and then there are years that we have more money available. It could be greater than what's taken in because the debt's been paid off, if that makes sense. But, you know, one year we received, what, $38 million or $31 million from this, and then some years we received less. So it's not a predictable number now because not only we don't have control over it, but then there's the debt service piece that falls into it, that plays into both systems, the Asheville City projects and Buncombe County Schools projects.
And we don't see the bonds. We don't know especially like, we don't know their timing and when some are coming up and when some are, when they're going back out for new bonds. So there's a rotation of all of the debt and different projects in those bonds that they're rolling through. And the life of those bonds are different.
So in this last election, we had bonds to get approved.
This is not the same type of
Not the same
bond.
type of bond.
This is a bond that they can, it's called a LOBS, a local obligation bond that the county can do without an election. So they go after bonds.
So this is their debt
Correct,
that they're causing themselves to have.
correct.
And we get affected by it because they got so much debt.
The county,
The county.
the county has some.
So I figured out the math. So 62 million total collected from Article 39. 25 million off of that leaves you with 37. 50% of that's roughly 18. And then 85% of that's Buncombe County's share, which is around the 15 number. So that's, if for the board members, I did the math to show you, but if you subtract the consequences for BCS slide, if you subtract those two numbers, so with Article 39, our total budget could be about 34 million, but without it, it would be 14 to 17 million. So that's where that comes from. So I think you had to figure that out real quick, because a lot of that's a number that people can actually talk about, right? Is that we're at risk of losing access to $17 million worth of school capital that would go towards, projects like Glen Arden. And so students and their families that attend those schools that have very sincere capital needs that far exceed $17 million a year. I mean, it's a very important issue for our families and our students.
And last year they switched, you may remember because you was on the board, they switched to some projects now being pay-as-you-go and not going in debt, which is a very smart decision financially, depending on what type of project it is. So their goal was to reduce debt and the amount of interest we're paying now that we are moving to some of the projects as pay-as-you-go versus doing a LOBS. And that would change the amount of all the sales tax to increase the amount we could get each year above the 17 million.
My last question is around the planning cycle for Article 39 and the Capital Fund Commission. So I know it's project-based now, and I guess with the allocation that Commissioner Wells advocated for, we're submitting, like we've got $436 million worth of capital needs here. Some level of those go through the Capital Fund Commission and are presented as capital projects we need to pursue.
Definitely.
Asheville City is presenting their needs as well. And then there's some balancing in those discussions around, okay, based off of the allowable revenue from March 39 tax, you'll be able to fund these many projects next, and it's a year in advance, I guess, is the cycle of the project approvals?
Well, that kind of switched. It follows our same budget process now. So it's following after, we have to submit to them in April. So we will do our capital 4042 budget of the 435 million. We'll do that this month. We'll pull some of that money out and move it to the Article 39. Article 39 already has some projects like the W.D. Williams, the North Buncombe High project. There's a project at Valley Springs. There's a whole list of projects that are already in 39 that are phased, that we're needing more money to keep them moving. Plus, we'll add to that list, and in a prioritized manner. So that list is going to be, well over what it can fund, and it always is.
Thank you. Brandon?
Mr. Chair, I don't want to belabor the point, but I do just want to mention, and the choosing to divide that Article 39 by ADM is really an annual decision, because under the legislation, it can be divided by need by the commission or by ADM. Ms. Clemens is our representative on the Capital Fund Commission, and we'll depend on her to advocate.
Don't you worry.
And we know she will. But each year, the commission will decide which projects are funded, and they're allowed to do that either by the severity of the project from either school system or by ADM percentages. And so that's what happened last year, and we hope it happens from now on, but there's no guarantee of that either. And so that would go to the School Capital Fund Commission, and the commissioners on the School Capital Fund Commission would make those determinations.
I'm sorry, I have one more question. And not to get into the politics of things, but did you say this changed in 2016 or 2019 where this commission was formed?
2016.
16. And who made that decision? Did we vote on that across the county, or the county commissioners did that?
The legislators voted on it.
The
same-
legislature?
The state legislator voted on it.
Thank you. Okay, just want to
Same
make
place
sure
it
I'm
is,
clear on that.
has to be changed by the legislator.
Okay, thank you.
I would just like to say I thank you so much. The dedication that you and each of your teams have, there's no telling how many hours and moments of prayer and meditation that you have expended doing all this. But it makes it palatable for those of us who are listening to it in terms of just being able to understand it. Maybe not agree with everything that's coming down the pipe, but certainly to understand it and appreciate the stewardship with which you face every one of these challenges. So thank you, Ms. Thorpe and your team, and Mr. Clark and your team. I really admire and respect what you do and what you bring to the table every day.
Thank you.
Board members, any other comments or questions for Clark or Tina? Before I let you go, could we just revisit one more time the upcoming schedule for our budget process around, like, next steps in the capital budgeting process for us as a board? Can we just talk about, like, the schedule and the upcoming process for the capital budget approval?
I'll be happy to answer that for you, Mr. Chairman. So as Mr. Wyatt mentioned, our capital outlay committee begins their work tomorrow. They have a series of 6 meetings scheduled with the possibility of a 7th. They will work through all the projects. That will then come to the Board of Education for your approval for the budget request, and that will actually happen at the April 25th meeting. And so that capital outlay committee starts their work tomorrow, and that's all the stakeholders that were previously mentioned. And then ultimately, that'll come to the board as part of the budget request at the last budget work session.
Okay, so April 25th is really the next
For capital, yes, sir.
meeting of this board to review the capital projects that you're pushing forward. Okay,
Correct.
all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated. Well, before I adjourn, I just do want to say thank you to both of you again we did switch topics here for this work session because of the legislation that has been crafted, so that we can understand the impacts better, and that also folks, if they can, watch this recording and learn more about what we have on our to-do list as far as capital repairs in our schools that are very much necessary, and the financial impact of the way that bill is currently crafted and what it could do to us. So thank you for spending some extra time and working fast on putting this together for us. It's very informational. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to also make a comment. It is my understanding that this bill is on the fast track to be looked at and passed within the next couple of weeks. So I think we as a community have our work cut out for us.
It's currently in committee, Rules Committee?
That is my understanding, that they were sending it over there.
Okay. And it'll be part of a budget bill? So
That is my understanding.
bill will come from the House to the Senate, this will get added on, and then it'll go to reconciliation, I guess?
Well, it started in the Senate, so
Mr. Chair, in this case, so the pathway you just mentioned is a possibility. It could be added into the budget bill and follow the pathway. It's currently a local bill, and so potentially could go through that way as a local bill, in which case it wouldn't necessarily go to the budget bill because it's not an outlay of state funding. It's just a mechanism for how this Article 39 would be handled in Buncombe County. So as a local bill historically does go through a little quicker, or can go through quicker, and so it could be handled either way. It could be put into any other bill, including the budget bill, or it could go forward as a local bill. Currently, it's a local bill.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or discussion from the board? Okay, with that, I will seek a motion to adjourn our work session, please.
Sojourn.
Thinking hard over there.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned.